we're ready to get rolling, and people are ready for me to stop making corny jokes. Zane is coming on, or he's coming back on. Zane has had a heck of a time with his network connectivity today, so we'll keep our fingers crossed. But gents and ladies, we haven't been able to have this call for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. In part because of KubeCon, in part because a bunch of other things going on, trying to get ready for KubeCon, trying to get ready for the .6 release. And so we're back though. And so Yash, I don't know that you've been able to join this particular call, the WebAssembly filters call. If that's not the case, will you take a moment just to say hi to everybody, just to do a quick introduction? Tell us what your favorite G.I. Joe is, maybe what you want to do.
Yeah. Hello everyone, I'm Yash. I'm from India, Delhi. I'm currently in my second year, or which is a sophomore year in college. I joined like a layer 5 community in about one and a half month. I have contributed in layer5.io, layer 5 website, and I know React, and yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome, that's great. Yash, there's a line of prior Yashes that had a similar story as to yours. And so you're in good company with the rest of the Yashes, I think. A few of them aren't active at the moment, but so it's nice to have you here though. We're going to talk about a little bit. We're going to talk about some React things on today's call, so keep your ears perked up. We also have Mr. Sandeep. Will you take a moment? It's just a tradition for us to welcome any newcomer onto the call and just have you say hi, give a quick introduction. It's a nice, good way to break the ice here. And so, Sandeep.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yep, there you are. Well, Sandeep, you were audible just a second ago.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm Sandeep from India. I'm a full stack developer using Stack. Yeah, audible now again? Is there any problem?
Yeah, the volume dropped way down.
Okay.
We can kind of hear you. It's just super low. Yeah, sure. Yeah, take your time. We'll circle back. We did get the part about you being from India, which was like, it's like weird. So wait, your name's Sandeep and you're from India, I guess. Just messing, just playing around. Okay, all right, boy. Thank goodness I laugh at my own jokes. Otherwise, it just wouldn't be. Okay, well, so speaking of general, yeah, Sandeep, go ahead. We hear you.
Yeah, now I'm audible.
There you go. We're
yeah,
good.
Yeah. Indians generally have Sandeep as a name. It's not a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I hear that.
So I'm a full stack, using Stack, React, Angular. Sorry, I know like major tech stack like Angular, React, and Node.js, and yeah, I'm a like open source contributor to some different organizations, and I like to be like a part of different communities to network with people and learn something from them.
It's nice to have you. That's great. Yeah, so Node.js, Angular, mean stack,
Yeah, sorry,
Mern,
Mun stack.
yeah.
Like yeah, both. I like I explore both Angular and also React. But I like both. I don't have any comparison between both.
Oh, got you. It's more of like a Mearn stack for you, I guess. Nice. Cool. Oh, good to have you, Sandeep. Yeah, yeah. Well, good. Well, let's talk about some React stuff today if we can. Actually, I think that might be what's first up. So, Gaurav, do you want to take it away? You want to talk about your item?
Yeah, sure. So let me share my screen. So currently I was having some issues with my local Meshri, but I have a video that was recorded. So I think this video pane is tab is visible now, or some other tab is visible. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So I'll play just a basic demo of having the import facility with a single import button. So the user will now have a single import button with drop down of all the items of imports, which will show the normal local upload, URL upload, plus the GitHub upload. And previously what we were having was a modal over a modal that was carrying over all the 4 options for the imports. And the main thing that needs to be discussed for the GitHub, yeah, this thing. So in the last Wasm call, Utkarsh gave me a good review of what the UI should look like and how we should proceed with the GitHub import. So currently this is not at all a final or a draft even, so I was not able to move ahead with this thing. But the main issue with the GitHub import is thing that should we go with the icons approach drop down or the modal with 4 options. But that will have one issue that we are using modals for each and every upload components. So modal over a modal, that won't be a good approach. So that's why I choose the drop down icon menu.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Anybody have feedback for Gaurav? By the way, Gaurav, I keep going back and forth on putting emphasis on the first part of your name or the last part, and I'm confused. Can you remind me?
First part of the modal.
No, can you enunciate your name for me? Because I keep like moving emphasis. Yeah.
Yeah, my name.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gaurav Chadha. Yeah, it's just simple.
Gaurav. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Gaurav. Yeah, I know. And we've known each other for like, I don't know how many months now. Like, but
yeah.
But I keep flipping back, and I'm sorry to interrupt. But it bugs the shit out of me. It's like, I didn't know if it was Gaurav, which is what I think I've mostly been saying. I think what you just said, Gaurav.
Yeah.
But there's a different way of enunciating it where the emphasis is. So anyway, Gaurav, good. We're good. Yeah. So to give Gaurav some feedback, and everybody else that's on the call is welcome to give feedback here. By the way, everybody else that's on the call, if you haven't spent a lot of time in Meshri's UI, so one, know that it's React based. It runs on Next.js. We don't use Next.js a ton, but we do need to do some refactoring of, well, whether it's in Next.js, and I always confuse this, or in Golang, maybe it's more in Golang, is some of the structuring of our UI endpoints. We'll talk about that later, but there's also a Figma design file. I think that, to use Figma vernacular, it's a design file for Meshri UI. If you don't have access, just request access. You should have access though. Within there, we have some, well, we use Material UI. We have a little bit of our own tweaked design language, like not much from what Material UI is. try to add a little bit of special flavoring so that it's not bland and so that it's, and so one item of feedback that I had was that for better or worse, like right now it's for worse, is that the height of the buttons that you have here are not, which also probably means the font size on the buttons is probably not of the standard size that's defined within the standard button size. And so the same thing goes for the, and I know part of this feedback is like, well, yeah, it's like hardly even a draft. So you're just kind of throwing things on there to get stuff going. And so, take all this with a grain of salt. Like I don't, but hopefully as you're just throwing things on, you're able to grab, like if our component for a button doesn't by default have like a primary and secondary, like primary being import and secondary being cancel, and those don't come with default sort of centralized styling, excuse me, bless me, then we're in trouble. Like we should go make sure that is the case. That way, even just as you're moving briskly and using a button, that you'd have to be trying not to have standard styling.
Okay.
So, yeah. Anyway, so the same thing goes for the import button, which I think is pretty neat. Good of you and Utkarsh to discuss and try to come up with a good user experience. So this will be the second time that we're going to use that type of user experience. For those of you that have Meshri UI up or have played with it, in the lower left-hand corner, there's a question mark button. And that question mark button, it does a similar expandable, it'll expand into a set of buttons. And just the same as this import button in the upper right-hand corner is doing. So that's nice. We'll want to figure out whether or not we want to add a gray background or some other background to make sure that people can, see those actions a little more visibly. But in general, like that's great, guys, because we're basically here in the WebAssembly filters management area for Meshri. We're basically offering users like 4 different ways of importing a filter, which is a binary file. And so, yep, this is great. Like, hey, before they even begin, it's like, okay, you want to import, but of what method did you want to use? One of these 4. And then from there, they'll get a modal kind of specific, it has specific context as to the style of import that they're doing. So that makes a lot of sense. Utkarsh and Gaurav, as you guys think about this, when that modal comes up and they're being asked to import, given we're going to go ahead and treat the service mesh patterns repo, that organization and repo as special. And so, and I think you're doing it here. You've got the beginnings of like treating that special. You've got the kind of by default, you're saying, did you want to import a pattern? And by the way, here's a predefined collection of those patterns that you could just import from. So I don't think I'm saying anything that you guys aren't already considering for. It's when, so Ashish is with us, something for the 3 of you guys or all of us to kind of think about is, and Rudraksh, is seeded content, which might already, yeah, I don't know, like some of the same patterns that will be potentially immediately available might already be loaded into Meshri. So when someone goes to import from here, they might try to import duplicative patterns or duplicative WebAssembly filters. That's fine, like the system will handle that. I guess I'm just trying to think out loud with you all. So right now, literally what Gaurav is showing is the patterns interface for service mesh patterns and importing patterns. But the reality is between patterns, applications, Kubernetes manifest, and then this third content type, WebAssembly filters, like all three of those are just, we treat them as content. Like some of them are in a YAML format, some of them are binary format, but we have a dedicated GitHub service mesh patterns, like a dedicated organization just for patterns. We have a repo, wasm filters, a dedicated repo just for a collection of filters. Because those are special and they're being built in this community and they're being built for purposes of helping people get at the value of a mesh, we're going to build in, we're going to hard code pointers to those different locations so that people can pull in that content. So even though we're looking at a patterns UI right here, it's like the very same set of interactions we're going to want on the filters area. And so anyway, that's just a set of thoughts for me. In this recording, Gaurav, do you recall if you navigated to own repository, to that secondary?
Yeah, maybe I recorded that thing. Yeah, it is there.
Okay, so the difference in over time as you iterate on this, as you guys talk about it, might be that on service mesh patterns, because the URL is hard coded, it might be that you're immediately just showing people a list of names of the patterns, a list of names of the filters. Whereas, yeah, if they click own repository, then they'll have to type in. We shouldn't, yeah. Yeah. So cool. So anybody else have thought, Utkarsh, Rudraksh, Ashish, anyone else comments on this?
So I just noticed one thing. There's a note Meshri server will not be able to access private repositories. Probably you want to show that only if a user is on a provider, because Meshri Cloud supports that.
Yeah. Okay.
One other piece of feedback then. So I'm not sure who all was on, I think it was the community call. I don't remember now. We were talking about having a catalog of service mesh patterns. We were talking about Meshri.io having a catalog of patterns. There's an open pull request on Meshri.io to create a catalog of service mesh patterns. In some respects, when someone navigates here and they want to import a pattern from the standard catalog, it's like, oh, well, they're kind of gonna, there's like, we might want to have a catalog browsing experience for the existing service mesh patterns, because they're going to want to choose the name and they might want to know, what does it do? So they might want to see a little image about it. Maybe like basically the same grid view of like patterns to choose from. That would be pretty cool. I think for people who are trying to understand what patterns are available and what they do. It'd be nice. It'd be nice though if it wasn't like a third step people have to get to. Like so we might want like a dedicated catalog icon on the top of the, either as like an import choice, or can anyone argue with me on that? Can anyone provide a different perspective? I think that makes sense. I think that like if you go over here, you're trying to figure out what patterns might be available. Right now we have this table view. It's like the default, it's like the thing that you're interacting with when you're managing patterns is a table. It's like, okay, now Abhishek, who's not on the call, and I know maybe I could ask Shayatan. Shayatan, do you mind poking Abhishek Kumar?
Yeah.
The one
right.
with, okay. The one with the H in his name, not the other one.
Like
Um,
Abhi 09.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's working, the reason we're poking him is one, he should be on the call, but two, he's working on a configurator, a different interface rather than just the table itself. But I wonder, I might propose to all of you that as someone lands on, they open up this patterns management interface, that maybe half of the screen, like maybe the top half of the screen is like, well, I don't know, something like potentially is just the catalog, like a grid, a carousel, not a carousel, but God, what's the right word? Just a set of service mesh patterns that are available to them to import and use that describe them basically like a catalog view, a grid view. Maybe it's on top, maybe it's just to the left, to the right, and then they can deal with all the patterns that they already have loaded. And if they want to configure them and things, I don't know, like, because does the user, if we have a bunch of patterns that are predefined and ready for people to use, do they need to go through this process by which they go to click and then import and browse the catalog and figure, no, why don't we just show them the catalog, and then we can let them know that either that pattern is locally available, it's already been imported, or not. But either way, it gets them to their goal a little quicker. It gets them to perusing patterns. It's the same thing for the WASM filters. Is there'll be a collection of WASM filters available that could be presented in a catalog format. Okay. So other than Manav, who I know is tracking this mentally, and who I'm going to speak to about potentially doing those things here, for Yash or Sandeep or others, maybe even Alan, who might like to put together what that catalog looks like. Does that resonate? I mean, is everybody kind of tracking? If we sit in silence long enough, it becomes awkward enough, so much that someone's compelled to say something. I will pull up the PR that I was referring to that has on Meshri.io, that has kind of an initial stab at a pattern. I'm sorry, a catalog. Go ahead and share here. So these are just the outstanding pull requests on Meshri.io. So Meshmate Aditya had given a shot at what that catalog might look like a little while ago. So if we go take a look at the preview for his updates. Okay, I might need to find the specific URL. So pages, service mesh patterns. Let's see what this is it. So I know we're talking about patterns and we're on the WebAssembly filters call. The thing is this same thing is applicable to the exact same thing. The exact same components that we would make are applicable to WebAssembly filters. So this is a draft of what a catalog of content might look like, whether the content is pattern, filter, or application. So there's kind of a it's just like a shopping experience, right? It's calling it a catalog is fine. What's missing here is a bit of like a modal that you might expect if you were to click on to drill into a single catalog item. You might expect to either get redirected to a page that describes that more in detail, or just a modal that shows you the thing more in detail. Or if there's not that much additional detail to show, other contributors have thought of something that is kind of interesting, works a little bit better. So here's just a collection of a grid, a collection of workshops in this case. But imagine that this is your catalog of patterns, your catalog of filters. So you have a grid. You're like, yeah, oh, this one's interesting to me. I'd like to click it, or I'd like to expand it, like basically staying on the same page, expand the size of the card so that you can get all the details. You're still on the same page. You can minimize it. So that's another way of thinking through what that catalog might look like. Any comments? Awesome filters and default content providers, I suppose. So we could use potentially some a catalog design. So we kind of brainstormed on that as like taking inspiration from the /workshops. Layer 5io/workshop. Yeah, this. So it might be nice not to have to give someone a modal, or not to have to redirect them to a dedicated page, but let them, expand and collapse things. This, by the way, if inspiration is taken from here, it's great that the default click on a card has the effect of maximizing. Great. It's not necessarily intuitive, like how to minimize. Because if I just clicked on the card, it's like I should be able to click it again to minimize, reverse the action. And instead it's a read less. Also, this means not to maximize, to expand the card, but this means to go to a page dedicated to just that workshop. And you can go back. So this isn't the most intuitive experience, but I do think that there's something to be taken from there. Yeah, that icon looks like a maximize icon. That's Alan, like we should do something about that. It's not, I think at the time, the collection of people who were working on that page, they were under duress to get it done because we were going to launch that site. And then post-launch, we didn't come back. So cool. Gaurav, I don't know if we just couldn't think of any feedback to give you about your topic today. I don't know what to tell you. It's a lot of feedback. It's nice to see that expandable, God, I don't know what you call it, but that expanding set of buttons. It's nice to see that being used. So anything else before we go to the next? Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Well, Ashish, we put you on the spot earlier. So I don't know, Ashish, can you remind us where we're at on the registration of initial content?
Yeah, so the thing for patterns and filters was done a long time ago, and the PR was merged for the app seeding of applications last week. So as of now, the behavior for both for not both for all the applications, filters, and patterns is exactly the same, and that is being reflected in the design spec. And that is that when the Meshri server starts up, all of the no, there is no extra logic or extra intelligence there. All of the filters, all of the patterns and applications that are there inside of the Meshri image, they will be seeded with the Meshri server. They will be there in the available in the database. So when the user opens UI for the non-provider, for the local provider, he would be he or she would have those patterns, filters, and applications out of the box.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything else to talk about there other than foreshadow that there'll be a design spec coming.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Okay, good. By the way, for everybody else on the call, just to make sure that you're understanding what we mean by seed content, just content meaning WebAssembly filters, service mesh patterns, or Kubernetes applications. That's what we mean by content, because they are all of those are artifacts that Meshri orchestrates. All of those are artifacts that Meshri can import and lets people manage, deploy a Kubernetes application, apply a service mesh pattern, design a service mesh pattern, configure a filter, deploy a filter. So they all get treated under that same umbrella of being content thing, and then seeding the content means that when you start up Meshri, that if you go over and look at the applications area or the patterns area that Gaurav was showing, that instead of the UI, which would be like right here, if as a user, if you were to go over to the patterns UI, instead of being shown an empty table, you would see a bunch of content, a bunch of patterns available out of the box. So seeding content just means making patterns and filters and applications available out of the box. Okay, good. Next topic, well, is configurating, right? So Abhi, Zane, I'm not sure if this was an area that you were still working on, but I know Abhi had been focused here. Abhi, and Zane, you guys want to talk to us about configurating?
Yeah, sure. Just to confirm that my network is not checking on me. Am I audible?
Yep.
Okay. I'll just share my screen, not create a public, but just can I?
Yep, please.
All right. Yeah. So basically, okay. This. So when we go to the applications and patterns, we have this configure option, which is yeah. So we have this configure option, which is common for both application and patterns. Once you press the configuration, you're going to this configuration option. And as of now, the code has been repeated for the applications as well as patterns, though they both are doing the same way. So what I was assigned to do is to make them a reusable component. So as of now, both are fine and working. So I will be making the PR as I thought right tonight. That's the update for myself. Abhi,
Yeah, nice. That makes sense. Abhi, do you have feedback for Zane?
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah. So currently I don't have any feedback. If it is like
actually,
I will get in touch with him like after the call and get the detailed version of like what needs to be done.
Yep, makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, I don't know that there is a ton of feedback to give because we're just looking to have the same experience configuring applications and configuring patterns, like more or less, at least to start. That's good. So,
Yeah, maybe I have feedback. So what I think Zan was showing me, Zan had showed me earlier that in the patterns code base, if Zan can show that from the VS Code. So the patterns configuration was already inbuilt with the patterns with the in a single file. So what Zan did is made a separate file for the pattern configuration and separated it out and make it as a reusable component to use it across the applications and filters. Am I right, Zan? Is that the thing?
yep, that's
yeah,
that's what I.
yeah, that was. I actually have that right now. This is my the not the UI dev, it's on the other one. So right now I think yeah, one that's onboard has some issues with the application. So yeah, so application. Yeah, I just want to confirm that we have nothing when it comes to applications right here in the YAML editor. But when we get to the patterns, we have something coming. But once I tried refracting it to have a single component, both of them are not showing up. So I just want to know, am I missing something or it's supposed to behave that way?
So currently the thing you are seeing in the YAML editor is like fine grained for the patterns only. But it should be visible for applications too. I don't know what could be the problem.
Okay. So should I make a PR for this or
Create a PR, we can look at it.
okay? Yeah, that's it from my side.
Nice. Good stuff. And then Abhi, this is a good lead in into any updates that you might have on this same UI configurator.
Yeah, so actually I'm stuck into a different bug which is on the mesh map. I don't know. I just tried getting away from the class component for one component like the secondary drawer, and things are not working the way it should. So I'm just stuck for a long time on this thing. So it couldn't get the time for patterns actually to apply.
Got you. Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. So this brings us to the end of our agenda for that we've defined. Time to open it up for other agenda items. Who has other things to talk about? While you all think of those, I'll ask, was anyone able to attend Cloud Native Day WebAssembly? Cloud Native Day WASM this last week? And so neither did I. I was busy giving a talk at Service MeshCon the same day, but it strikes me that there were a number of interesting topics that we might want to invite a speaker to come here and give an update to the extent that we find one of those topics interesting enough. So I guess maybe I'll drop a link to this day. So here's the schedule. Some of these will have their presentations attached, like this, from Napkin to the cloud WebAssembly. What? Oh, yeah. And then the videos will be out at some point as well. So maybe take a look. Let's see if we want to invite any of these folks to come discuss what they presented, not necessarily to represent, but just to discuss and engage. Okay, it's one item. Who else has got topics for today? It's another thing that's been kind of in the back of my mind as we're going through and talking about we're talking about public catalogs that Meshri will pull WebAssembly filters from. It will pull service mesh patterns from. So here's the repo that we're using today, WASM filters. Within the repo, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 or something different WebAssembly filters. And so this is the content that's being seeded. So the seed content, the 6 or so WebAssembly filters that are preloaded into Meshri server, into every Meshri build. Good. There's a single repo those are being retrieved from. The thing that's been in the back of my mind, that's probably an open question for all of us to consider as we go forth here is, well, okay. So there's been any number of people contributing to creating these filters. As we go to encourage others to create filters and contribute here, is this the right model? Do we want them contributing filters into this same repo? Or do we want it to be more of less about a repo with a bunch of filters and more about, should we have a separate org? So you can have a, we can have any, it would be one filter per repo. Like that's some overhead like that, but it's also, there's some nicety to having each one versioned independently, described separately, have issues, their own specific issues. Like that's something to think about. I think one other thing to consider as you all think about that is that, well, what if, what if Shaitan ends up writing a WebAssembly filter and like what's easier for him to do to push his filter into, like he can, when he boots up Meshri, he can point to his own repo and pull it in. Great. But if he wants it to be available kind of generally to everyone and sort of promote it and let Jibril know about the fact that there's this filter here and he can try it out and use it and provide feedback and all that, well, do we need a filter hub or like one way, if we move out of many filters per repo out of that model and we move to a model where it's one filter per repo, well, then we can potentially have an org dedicated to this and let people bring repos, or we can create new repos as and when people, well, actually community members, they can create their own repos as well and let people begin to build out independently. Like, there's another element to this when you think about it. So if Meshri is going to seed this content and it's going to provide these filters out of the box, would you imagine that they would work? Yes, you would, right? Like when we make the Meshri release, you would, if you as a user, you try to go use one and it doesn't work, you're going to complain that Meshri doesn't work very well, or that like you're going to go create an issue and go fix it within Meshri, right? It's a Meshri thing. Okay, well, if people are contributing new filters here, that means that, well, all of them need to be qualified as like officially supported, right? Like something that you could create a Meshri bug about and track. Could be good. I mean, the good part is like, yeah, good. We take on that responsibility and we've got to make sure they all work. Good. It's work though. Or should it be, the other model is a little more loose, you know, that each individual, if it's one filter per repo, well, you can have a standard descriptor about the status of a filter, like, oh, it was written by so-and-so. It is maybe been verified in terms of its compatibility with a certain Meshri version, or it is an official filter that's supported and you can open up bugs about, or no, you've got to go see Shayatan because it's a community contributed one that he and only he thought was cool, and nobody else was there to kind of help him. And so, or like, anyway, these are some things to think about and consider a little bit, because it'd be great if there's lots of filters to make and have out there, lots of different packets to manipulate and requests to deal with. It's like Meshri is a platform, right? It's an extensible platform. You can load in your filters. Like, great. So how do we best orient for community contribution, like community engagement, that reflects in the architecture, right? Because if like one of these is more oriented for community sustaining, self-sustaining development, the other one might not be. And so, think about that if you would. As a point of reflection, as you contemplate that, a point of reflection is when you look at Meshri's architecture. Meshri has adapters, one service mesh adapter for a given service mesh. So 10 adapters, so it supports 10 service meshes. Now, in that architectural model, that means that, you know, conceptually other people, the community and anybody can bring an adapter. That adapter just needs to satisfy this gRPC interface, and Meshri will talk to the adapter and they'll have a good time. Okay. Anyway, I'm just trying to help everyone think through the benefit, the pros and cons of these different approaches. So yeah, if adapters were built into Meshri and then they would be in tree, in source code main branch, like in master, in tree, and in a good way, that means that they work. If they're in there, they work. But in a bad way, if a community contributor or a different organization is trying to create their own adapter or create their own WebAssembly filter, and it's like built into the official repo that's supported and must be sustained, it's like the barrier to contribution is a bit higher because quality has to be guaranteed and maintained. And so, yeah. think about all that if you would. Maybe we should write some of that down as we think toward what might become a filter hub. So I guess, this isn't the first time that we're kind of having some of these thoughts. So should there be a filter hub where people can bring their own repo, or should it be in a repo format? Should they just bring their own filter to a single repo, or what? Like what is that? How should that look? So thoughts from anyone as we wind up the call?
Yeah, I think a separate org sounds good, because then we can set a template for those filters, so people can probably use that template, and in that template we can define some of the very basic things that are, you would need for defining a minimal what do you call that, filter, that would actually help people in identifying their needs. Because right now in the Wasm filter repository, everything, we have filters for all those, but they're all at a single place, and it is quite possible that people might get lost when they are looking through them. So yeah, separate org sounds good. And if it turns out to be good enough and it is active enough, I think, yeah, we can have that as the filter hub.
Other feedback? We'll call their repository. Yeah, I think it can. Yeah, this makes sense. I think part of the crux of the question is how should the architectural model reflect the goal of facilitating a community, facilitating a community of contributed filters. Assuming that that's a stated goal, that that we want to facilitate that community, that there should be. And yeah, yes, right. Meshri is a platform to bring your own content. Today, you can bring your own WebAssembly filters. It's just, there isn't a hub. There isn't a place to share particularly. So yeah. All right. About a minute left. Anybody got anything else? So as we look toward next week, potential future agenda items include interesting topics from Cloud Native Day WebAssembly, potentially the seeding of content in a remote provider. Potentially, obviously, Gaurav, you got some feedback there. Abi is trying to work toward a better configurator. For my part, we still don't really have the best support for externalized WebAssembly filter configuration. So there's kind of two artifacts that need to come with a filter, the binary, the filter, which is a binary, and then also its deployment model, which could have any amount of configuration within there. So it's a future discussion. Another agenda item could be that our automated testing, our GitHub Actions, they don't, whether it's GitHub Actions or it's through Cypress directly, that we're not deploying we're not doing anything with filters. There's no testing going on for filters. One of the first filter that could be used for this is the image hub filter. I remember the name of it. Okay. Okay. Some things to look forward to for next time. And I think that's it. That's it. And if nobody has anything else, it is a reminder that we'll see you all on Wednesday for the Meshri development call. We'll have an announcement on the community call on Friday about a learning opportunity. So the meshmate Nikhil Lara, he'll speak to that. So. And all right, see you all Wednesday. Bye all.
Bye, folks.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye everyone.